Hi, welcome to Gemini Star Spiritual Wellness. Thank you for joining me today. I'm grateful that you're all here with me. And I want to thank all my new subscribers for joining the channel. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me to have people joining and liking and subscribing to the channel and helping to get this information out. And I'm just excited to be here and be able to share all this knowledge with you guys out there that are watching. So thank you so much. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the April astrological update. We just got out of March and I'm doing this video on April 5th. And, it was a wallop last month. Those eclipses really packed a wallop on us energetically. And those energies from the eclipses will last for 6 months. And we have another set of eclipses that are coming up in September. We have a lunar and a solar eclipse coming up in the fall. And so we got many months of energy from these eclipses going through. But I know that for me personally, I could really feel the energy coming off these eclipses, even after they were over. It's crazy. It's like 1 minute I'm kind of tired and I want to sleep and I feel exhausted, and then the next minute I'm like bouncing off the walls and I'm having a hard time like calming down and getting my energy level back to normal. So it's been kind of a back and forth with that, but it's been a very intense energetic month. Looking in, I was doing research for this and looking into April, it looks like it's just going to continue with a lot of crazy astrological events going on and energy coming in. So the first thing I want to bring up is we're coming up to a full moon in Libra, and that's going to happen next week on April 12th. And it's going to be a focus on relationships. And Libra is all about balance and understanding. So that's going to bring definitely a focus to the balance of our relationships. And it could be, not just personal relationships, but it could be, business partnerships as well, any kind of relationships, family relationships, anything like that. But it's also this is happening in Aries time, right? So right now is Aries season, and so it's definitely charged with fire energy during this time as well. So looking at my notes here, I don't want to miss anything, so I made sure to write everything down. So basically, we're going to be looking at what we need to change in relationships and how our subconscious a lot of times holds trauma and patterns and wounding that we're not even consciously aware of, and how those subconscious patterns, trauma, and wounds can affect our relationship. So that's kind of what this new moon's going to be, or I'm sorry, full moon's going to be helping us with. So that's really interesting. And I noticed a theme when I was looking at the astrology for this month. I noticed a big theme about relationships. And I'm not surprised about that at all because the energy that we're going through just globally, planetary energy, it's very much to make changes in our life, to push us to make changes. And relationships are a big part of our life, whether they're personal or familiar, family relationships or business relationships. And so that energy is pushing us to make changes. So if you're in a relationship that's toxic, that's not really good for you and not for your greater good, the energy is going to push you to make those changes. It doesn't want you to stay stuck and stagnant in that energy. And it will get to a point, if you're resisting changing, it'll get to a point where it won't let you anymore and it'll just push you through it. Um, some other things going on. So we've got Mercury that's been in retrograde for a couple weeks now. It's going to be going direct in Pisces, and then it'll go in direct to Pisces, and then later on it'll go into Aries. And Aries is a very take action type energy. So Pisces is kind of like spiritual energy and kind of dreamy. It's very similar to Neptune that way. And so it's going direct in Pisces, but then it's going to shift. And, when these planets shift and go direct and they do all these type of alignments, it takes a couple days. So it's like, even though it's shifting direct, there's like a couple days or a week of kind of a period where it's in the shadow before it's fully, before that energy of being direct finally comes into it. So it takes a couple days for that energy to really transmute and shift. But basically, this Mercury going direct is going to help us um, take action from shifts that happen during the eclipse. So, in lessons that we learned when it was retrograde for those couple weeks. So, thinking about things that happened during the eclipse, things that might have came to light, information that might have came to light, it's going to allow us to apply these lessons and what we've thought about practically in a practical way. It also helps with clarity and communication. Because a lot of times, you'll hear during Mercury retrograde that, electronics will be affected, communication's harder to do because Mercury, controls those things. And so when it's going retrograde, it messes that up. But that should get resolved and move forward now that it's going direct. Also, Venus will be going direct as well. She's been in retrograde. She'll be going direct in Pisces. Once again, it's a very spiritual type sign. And so basically, it's going to be helping us with realignment and adjustments in our relationships, kind of what I was talking about before, making changes from what we learned about our relationships during retrograde. So that's really, interesting to me because, like I said, it's a big focus on relationships. And once again, it's making us kind of assess our relationships, look at it on a deeper level, and kind of do a realistic assessment of our relationships and find out if, we basically admit to ourselves that those relationships are working for us or not. Do we need to change them? Do we need to get out of those relationships? What do we need to do in that situation? Because sometimes it's easy to get complacent when you're in a situation, a relationship, and you don't want to make any changes because it feels comfortable and safe. But the universe is like, no, you really need, the contract on this relationship's ended, or this relationship's no longer good for you. It's time to get out of it. And then, you'll have those realizations. And like I said, if you don't take action on it, it's going to push you through it and make you take action on it anyway. So it's better to do it on your own than have the universe push you. That can make it a lot worse. So Mars enters Leo again. It was in Leo and it came out, and it will be entering back into Leo in April. And it will basically that will help us with joy and being enthusiastic and being creative and in change. Once again, change is a big part of April. But the interesting thing about creative expression is this. So every one of us has creativeness in us. We all have a way of creative expression. And I feel like in the world we're in, the 3D matrix that we're in, a lot of times that gets pushed out of us. We're kind of taught not to be creative. And if we have a creative side, we're discouraged from really, pursuing that and doing what we love and having joy in our life doing that creative expression. And it's kind of pushed out of us. Case in point, I will bring up my personal issue with this is as a child, I was very creative and I had a very imaginative mind, and I was really good about writing. And I remember I wrote a play for my school when I was in grade school, and we actually in the class did the play. I remember that. And I just remember having a talent that way, that I could really be expressive when it comes to writing. But, of course, my family was like, "Well, you can't get a good job doing that. You can't." It's like that's not something that you can pay the bills with, so to speak. And so I was kind of discouraged from really, pursuing that part of me and that talent that I had. That was kind of put on the wayside. And it was kind of discouraged that, well, you're just not allowed to be creative because the whole point is to get training, go through school, get a job, and that's it. But as an adult, I've discovered, well, that's not it. That's not really what we're here for, what life's all about. And as I got older, I started to dip back into writing. I started to dip back into that creative pursuits of myself that I felt like I neglected when I was growing up because it was kind of, discouraged out of me. But I think a lot of people go through that in their lifetime as well, whatever your talent is. But I feel like, this is a good time to, get back into what you are joyful about, what you really like, be enthusiastic about life. And if you have creative expression, bring that out in you and basically be your true self. And again, with the global energies going on, we're being pushed into being our true self and to basically love who we really are. and love our talents and abilities instead of trying to hide them, instead of trying to focus on fitting in with everybody else. Now is the time to not fit in with everybody else and to be yourself and to love yourself for who you truly are. And don't feel like you have to compete with other people or feel like you have to fit in or believe what other people tell you about yourself because only you know who you really are. So the key is to believe in yourself and not listen to what other people say about you because when it comes down to it, you know who you are, you know what your talents and gifts are, and you're the one that knows what's best for you and not anybody else. Also, we've got the sun will be going into Taurus on April 20th. So we got Aries for a little bit longer. And then towards the end of the month, it's going to go into the sun sign of Taurus. Taurus is a very grounding energy. And it's going to help us going to Taurus's season is going to help us to basically come to terms with all the changes that happened in March and April. So there's been a lot of changes. Maybe, I'm talking about on a global scale, but also there's probably been some in your personal lives as well. And that Taurus energy will help us to ground that energy and everything that's come at us over the last 2 months, which has been a lot. So that will help us with that. And it's also a very nature, earth energy, Taurus. So it's a good time to get out into, it's a very tangible energy too. So it's a good time. Sorry, it's warm here and I am sweating and my glasses just keep sliding off my face. So keep having to mess with my glasses. So it's very much above normal for the weather right here. The temperature's higher than normal, and I'm like, oh, it's hot today. So sorry, I have to keep messing with my glasses. But the earth energy is very grounding, but it's also very tangible, and it's kind of like it helps us with nature too. So this is a good time when you're going into Taurus season, and the sun goes into Taurus. It's a good time to get out into nature and enjoy nature and spending time in nature during that season. And of course, it's spring, so the weather's a lot nicer than it was during the winter time to do that. It's also a good time to focus on our gratitude. So just being grateful for what you have, and focus on our bodies. So it is a tangible sign. So focus on your bodies. Now's a good time to like make changes in your health, taking better care of yourself, eating more healthy, watching what you eat and drink, exercising, making sure you get enough sleep, all those important things that we need to do to take care of our vessels. And then we also have a new moon in Taurus that's coming up on April 27th. That's at the end of the month. And that's going to help with new foundations and working on our self love and loving who we are truly within. As I said a minute ago, you definitely, new foundations for ourselves and truly loving who we are and self-care that way. So a lot of people talk about self-care as being, listening to good music and meditating and things like that. And that is important, but it's also about loving who you truly are and embracing that and allowing that part of you to come out and allowing it to flourish and not try to hide that or not try to suppress who you truly are to help other people or to make other people feel comfortable. I know like me starting this channel was actually a big step for me in this direction because I'm coming out to the public about who I really am, about my gifts and abilities. And I spent many years, decades hiding who I really was and my gifts and abilities. So this is a big deal. It was a big shift for me to do this. And I have to admit, I was nervous. I was nervous about coming out and talking about these topics and starting this channel. But I knew that the time was now to do that. And I'm embracing who I truly am. And I'm no longer allowing people that are uncomfortable about who I truly am to influence how I react and influence what I do in my behavior. I understand that that's something they have to work within themselves, and I need to do what's best for me, and I need to embrace who I truly am. And I think that's the case for all of us. We all need to take care of ourselves and embrace who we truly are and our gifts and abilities, whatever they may be, and not let people stifle that and through their opinions or what they say to you or trying to fit into a behavior that they want you to do or act a way they want you to do. It's all about self-growth. So I think self-love goes beyond the things you can do to take care of yourself, like I mentioned, but it's also about accepting yourself as you are, loving yourself that way, and self growth too, and growing, because growth is a continual thing. We're always going to be growing and improving ourselves and, getting better and, focusing better on all these things. It's a continual process. So growth, self growth is a big part of that too, growing into, into those ways of how you feel about yourself. But also the new moon in Taurus will also bring kind of a tension between our stability and security, what we feel is stable and secure against growth and change, which I was just talking about. So it's kind of a tension between it because it's everyone wants to feel a sense of like stability and security, and I understand that. The problem is if you stay in that for too long, you get complacent and there's no growth. So it's kind of like, you plateau and you feel maybe secure and stable for a while, but then there comes a point where for your spiritual development, you have to grow and change. You can't stay in that same spot. So you're going to be forced to grow and change basically. So if you're not willing to do what it takes to make changes and growth when you see it, because what will happen is the universe will be like, and the divine, he'll be like, look, I just want to let you know, you'll get these realizations. I just want to let you know that this isn't working for you anymore. And you'll know it, like intuitively, you'll know, like it's time to leave relationships, or it's time to get a new job, or it's time to make changes in your life that are going to be better for you, that are going to be more in alignment with who you're becoming and who you have become instead of the old you and the alignment you were in the past, right? So you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that change. Like, I need to make these changes. I need to do this. And it's going to be this nudge, this intuitive nudge you're going to get from the universe and from the divine to make these changes. And they'll give you some time, they're going to keep working with you to help you. Basically acknowledge that you're feeling this and listening to your intuition, and then making the changes and doing what you need to do, what you feel intuitive to do, what changes you need to make intuitively. But a time will come, well, if you keep ignoring that, like I said, the universe is going to come in and it's just going to force it upon you. And I feel like it's much better if you do it on your own than if it's forced upon you, because it's much more jarring if it's forced upon you. So you probably don't want to do that. So once you start getting those nudges, you can't ignore it forever. I mean, they're getting those nudges for a reason. And it's because the divine always wants what's best for you. Just remember that your divine, the spirit guides, they always wants what's best for you. And it's always about what's best for you and your spiritual growth and development. That's why we're here. We're not here for material things. We're not here to fit in with people. We're not in here for any of that 3D stuff. We're here strictly for spiritual growth and development, and to learn, learn what it's like to be in a 3D reality, learn what it's like to be in this, this physical vessel in the 3D. I mean, it's a big learning experience, but it's also to help us grow spiritually. And that's what it's all about, the spiritual growth and development. And so when we get stuck and we get too secure and we get too stable and there's no growth and there's no, we're not following our path that we agreed to before we came to earth, we're not following our contracts, we're not doing what we should be doing, that's when the big Tower card comes in. And the big changes happen that the universe force upon you and the divine forces upon you, like bam. And at the time it'll seem like, oh, I'm being punished, why is this happening to me? Well, it's happening because you've been ignoring the promptings and you haven't been moving forward, and it's trying to push you to move forward. And I just see that in my own life when I've had big changes like that happen. At the time I feel like, oh, this is, I'm stressed out because I'm going through this really rough time and why is this happening? But then after I got through that time period, it's like I can look back in hindsight and see, okay, now I understand why it happened, because I ended up being in a much better situation than if I would have stayed where I was. So I think you're going to see some tension in the new moon. It's going to, the end of the month, the new moon in Taurus is going to kind of, push us to, and I think that tension's there on purpose to push you to make changes and growth if you're not doing it yet, and to help you. And like I said, the universe just doesn't leave you out there to flounder on your own. That's why we've got spirit guides. That's why the divine's there for us, and they work with us to help guide us through this process. And that's what those gentle nudges are. That's what your intuitional hits are, the downloads that you get through dreams and through synchronicities and things like that. That's all to help guide you on this process, to help you make and to be aware that you need to make these changes, and to be aware that you need to grow spiritually, and that's why this is all happening, and that it is going to be better when you get to the other side. It's definitely going to be better. Venus will also go back into Aries again on April 30th. So that's at the very end of the month. And Aries, once again, is fire energy, and it's going to push us to follow our passions and trust in our intuition and be creative. So, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier in the video about being creative, but basically to follow your intuition is going to be big, and follow your passions. Because I think a lot of us suppress our passions, what we're really passionate about. And like I said, I think a lot of that is the way we were raised, the world we live in, the society we're in. A lot of that was kind of crushed out of us. So now is the time to embrace your passions and to follow them, and to use that energy of Aries, which is a very, Aries is like, get out and be active, get out and do something about it type of energy. It's going to help us to do that. And just looking at my notes, make sure I don't miss anything. Yes, and be creative, be creative. All right, so I want to end with some information about the sun. So the sun's been kind of going crazy, as you know, you've probably seen information about, but there's been a lot of like geomagnetic storms happening, a lot of, solar flares coming from the sun. I keep getting updates on my phone, solar flare coming in, this solar flare, that solar flare. So it's been pretty active. And I knew it was going to be active in April because we're hitting the solar maximum period. So a lot going on with the sun, which is also going to affect all this stuff that's going on astrologically with the, all everything that's happening, astrologically with the planets. The sun's definitely going to help, influence that as well with everything that's going on, because it's just been so crazy busy, over the last couple months. And like I said, April's going to be no different with the sun. But there's also the geomagnetic storms are coming in. There's like particles coming in. And there's also something else going on where we're getting into more and more, the Earth is getting into the proton belt. So you have to remember that there are cycles upon cycles upon cycles. So the proton belt, and I don't remember how many years it is. It's like every thousands of years, couple thousands of years. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is. And I forgot to look it up before I came on here. But every thousands of years, when we're talking many thousands of years, the Earth goes through a proton belt. And every time it gets into this proton belt, there is an awakening in consciousness on the planet. And there in a golden age, a new age of enlightenment will start. And because the protons coming in are going to lift our consciousness. When we get into that belt, those protons hitting the planet are coming into us. And of course, you're not, consciously aware this is happening, because the particles and protons come down from the space and they actually penetrate into you. But they're like, affecting your DNA, they're unlocking things, they're, you know, helping your body and your consciousness to rise and become enlightened and have a shift up in consciousness. So every time we get into this belt, we have the consciousness, rises in the population. We have an enlightenment. So a golden age comes around. So, knowledge comes out, exoteric knowledge comes to light. Things happen to help us get into that golden age, into that age of enlightenment. And it helps propel that new age. So if I remember correctly, and I did some research on this a little while ago, I want to say it was a couple years ago at this point, but every time we went into this belt, there was like an awakening such as Atlantis happened. Like major golden era things happens. Every time we go into this belt, there's a major shift on the planet of awakening consciousness and enlightenment. Atlantis, and then before that was Lemuria. So Lemuria, Atlantis, and well, even Mu in the very beginning. Mu was the first one. Mu, Lemuria, and then Atlantis. There was always this, age of enlightenment will come to pass that would come into, and that's what's happening right now. So we're getting into this, and as time goes on, it's like, and it's a slow process. It's not going to happen in one day, but in the last couple years, we've been getting further and further into this proton belt. And that's definitely affecting the consciousness of the planet and rising it up. And we're getting ready to get into that next cycle of golden era and enlightenment. But however, the difference is, from what I believe intuitively and what I've seen, that this will be our last cycle of enlightenment and golden age. So once we get into the cycle really starts, which it's happening now, we get into that enlightenment golden age, then we're not going to fall back again. It's going to be like we're going to stay there. The earth's going to shift up to a higher vibration and there'll be no going back. We'll just stay in that place. This proton belt's helping that to happen. And I can't, I wish I could remember. My mind just went blank. It's like every 25,000 years, or maybe not that many, every 12, maybe it's 12,500 years. That's what it's coming in my head. But it's many, many thousands of years that this cycle is with this proton ball. But I just wanted to add that because the sun is going to affect, what's happening with us with energy throughout the month of April with all the activity coming from it. But also, we have all the energy from the planets with the astrological stuff going on in April too. So April's gonna continue to really, punch a wallop for us when it comes to energy. I mean, I feel like it's going to be pretty intense month with all of that. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you like this video and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.